Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. Well, I recently watched a YouTube video regarding an XRP prediction, and the reason why I watched it is because I noticed a lot of people are talking about this video. So this is a video put out by a very well-known analyst, Alessio XRP. He has a very large YouTube channel. He is a good analyst. He puts out good stuff. If you're not familiar with him, I recommend you go check him out. You should also check out his video. Now, in his video, he talks about XRP potentially going down to around 13 cents, if I believe I heard right. It wouldn't be a massive drop all at once. However, there would be substantial drops, and eventually it would work its way down to around that level. He uses Elliott waves to come to that conclusion. I'm not going to get into the different ways you can interpret what's going on the XRP chart using Elliott waves. There's plenty of analysts, big name analysts, that are probably doing that right now. I'm going to hit it from my perspective, which, even though I'm a tiny little channel compared to Alessio, the type of technical analysis I do is totally unique. So it's a unique perspective that no one else is talking about on the internet or on YouTube. So I'm going to talk about his prediction and why I believe it's probably not going to take place, at least not in the way that he may believe it's going to take place. And I'm going to stick to my knitting. I'm going to use the type of technical analysis that I do, and that is structural analysis, fractal analysis. So if this is your first time viewing my channel, XRP has a repetitive macro structure. In this structure, there are bull runs, there's declines. So after the bull run comes a decline. Always happens 100% of the time. After the decline, we go into a sideways range-bound time. Happens all the time, 100% of the time. After that sideways range-bound time, it goes back into a bull run and just repeats all over again. A decline, a sideways range-bound time. So here we have three different occurrences of that cycle. So the bull run, the decline, sideways range-bound time. Look how small this played out compared to this. But it's the same structure. If we go further back in time, see the same thing. Bull run, decline, sideways range-bound time. If we go back further over here, it starts with a sideways range-bound time, goes into a bull run, a decline, and another sideways range-bound time. So they play out on different sizes, different heights, different depth. And that's because every time a fractal repeats or a structure repeats, the timing, the height, and the depth, those don't copy over. Those are going to be original. So that's why they can play out on a large scale and on a small scale. Or when you drill down, you'll even notice that some parts play out larger than others, while other parts of the fractal play out smaller. All that is possible because the timing, height, and depth is going to be original every single time it repeats. So jumping back to this structure where we are today, so I find it funny that Alessio, in his video, he refers to this time where he makes a prediction that even though the lawsuit happened with the SEC, XRP was going to go up. And it did. He was right. So he uses this time from this fractal 3 as kind of credentials of why you should trust him for this time in this fractal 3. But what does fractal 3 do? Well, for those of you who follow this channel, you know. For those of you who are new, fractal 3 moves up to a peak, which is part A. It then crashes, which is part B. It then recovers, and then does a smaller correction, and then goes into the bull run. It does this every single time. If we were to examine this fractal 3 right here, you see the same thing. Price moves up to a peak, which is part A. It then crashes, which is part B. It then recovers, does a smaller correction, and then it goes into the bull run. It looks different. It looks very different from this time or this time. If we go even further back in time, we can examine this fractal 3. Price moves up to a peak, which is part A. It then crashes, which is part B, or declines. It then recovers, does a small correction, and then it goes into the bull run. It looks very different. This one looks very different from this one, and this one looks very different from this one, and this one looks very different from this one. But What they all have in common is that functionally they do the same things. They all move up to a peak, which is part A. They all crash, which is part B, which is very traumatic. This is a traumatic fractal to go through. It then recovers, it then does a smaller correction and goes into the bull run. This is playing out today. We don't know the full fractal. We don't know how it's going to look. It is my belief that this is part A. I have 3 different possibilities. You can watch my previous video. Here's one possibility, which I do not believe is most likely going to play out. When this was the low of the fractal after the decline, after part A, it made sense. But as it's gone lower, it makes less and less sense. This could potentially be part B, which is currently the low of the fractal. Or we could potentially be going into another low, which would bring it to, I don't know where, but in that sense, Alessio could be right. It could have a decline, and these declines, look over here, they're traumatic to go through. They're not easy. This is going to flush people out of the market. If we look back at this one was traumatic. It was a steep decline. If we go further back, this one had this nasty wick. It recovered, but continued the downtrend before it started reversing. They all are tough to go through. This one wasn't as steep. Let's look at it. It moves up to a peak, which is part A, it then crashes. This one played out on a very small time frame. It then recovers, does a small, tiny correction before going into the bull run. And if we go to the very beginning of the chart, we have the granddaddy of all fractal threes, the very first one. Price moves up to a peak, which is part A. It then crashes, which is part B. It then does a recovery, a small correction, and it goes into the bull run. This one went fairly low. So this one could potentially drop, my guess is somewhere in this zone here, the lower part of this current range-bound time, just like this one dropped pretty low, almost to a complete low of this range-bound time. This one dropped low, not to a complete low of the range-bound time, but they do potentially challenge those lows. So if this is going to drop lower, which we don't know, it could, we'll have to see how it plays out. If the low of the fractal has not taken place yet, Alessio could be correct in the sense that we could see a fairly traumatic move down. I don't believe it's going to go all the way down to 13 cents. That would be well outside of this range-bound zone. But after that decline, it would do something similar to this. It would recover, do a smaller correction, and then go into the bull run. On the flip side, we could be experiencing part B right here. This could have been the low. We don't know. This fractal has to develop a bit more before we know where this low will end up being. Let's remove this. So all that to say is he could be right in the sense in the short term, we could potentially see a low beyond what we've experienced over here so far. It could be over here. However, I don't believe it's going to go to a low like 13 cents. Historically speaking, it stays within this range-bound zone. So that's what history has to say. So this is one of the key takeaways of this video. This fractal does drop to a low, but it only stays within the zone of the range-bound time. Alessio's prediction of going outside this range, that is the part that I believe is not likely to happen. So there you have it. That is why I believe that Alessio is most likely wrong in the sense that it's going to have this massive bear market. What he is describing is more akin to a bear market, the decline that comes after the bull run. That is not what we are in at this stage in the chart structure. Understand that. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. If you did enjoy this video and you're not yet a subscriber, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. I'll continue to follow up on this chart as it continues to develop. Mr. Alessio is a good analyst. I am not throwing him under the bus. I'm just showing why I don't believe that to be the case, a big, large decline, looking at it from my perspective, from the type of technical analysis that I do. And I believe I have some authority to speak, even though I'm a tiny channel. And that's because my perspective is a unique perspective. There is no one in YouTube land doing what I do. So there you have it, folks. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.